So, welcome to the class. I'm Brother Gillette, and to help me kind of know where the class is at, I created this poll, but you have to log in if you get your phone or device. If you log into this address up here, it's going to bring up. Is it live now? Can you access it?
No.
Not yet. Can you refresh it?
Is it all uppercase?
No, it doesn't have to. It'll work either way, or it should do. Any luck? Nothing? Alright, well, maybe we'll just do it manually then. So, who's completed high school? Yeah, great. Oh, here we go. Somebody's logged in. Did somebody log in?
I went to pollev.com and looks like it won't. Didn't put the whole thing. Poll.
Alright, I'm not sure what's happening here, but we'll just do it manually. So, let's say everyone's in high school. We've got this next question. You got it? Okay. So,
Put the right
I'm actually going.
doing a little celebration dance there.
Oh yeah, it's working.
Yeah, you got it? Okay.
Is that 142? Is it?
Yeah, 142.
Double L, double T in the Gillette.
Yeah. So people are jumping on, I can see that now. Okay. Are you on? No?
It's coming up.
Have you completed any university courses? Yes or no? Yes. Yep. Good.
Yep.
Have you completed a bachelor's degree? Yep.
Yes.
Are you a first generation university student? Yes. Have you ever thought about completing a master's or doctoral degree?
And a master's.
Yep.
No.
Have you completed any postgraduate work, master's level or higher? Do you have sufficient information to prepare for graduate school? So for those of you who have done a master's, maybe, have you feel like you got information about how to apply for a doctoral program if you're interested in doing it? Does your chosen career path require a postgraduate degree, master's or higher? Yes. Do you think a postgraduate degree would benefit you, be beneficial to you financially? Which of the following best describes your current situation? A bit hard to see, I'll read it out. I'm interested in pursuing postgraduate school. I'm not interested in pursuing postgraduate school. Undecided. I don't have the financial ability. My undergrad grades are not good enough. These are all the types of questions I hear from prospective applicants. I'm interested in pursuing postgraduate education options at BYU. I know someone else who's interested in attending BYU. I think this is the last one. How many postgraduate programs are offered at BYU? That's like all our masters and graduate, masters and doctoral. So the options here: 9, 19, 29, 89, 109. I'm just curious.
109?
It's 89, I'd say 80.
Here's 89. Okay, that's the end of that. So if that had worked, I'm sorry it didn't work on your phone, but I'll have to play around with that some more. It was working this morning, but I'm going to bring up the...
Only to the first one, and then it won't allow me to go on.
Yeah, so
Oh,
the first screen worked and then the second question didn't pop up.
Yeah.
so just a little bit about me. Again, my name is Brother Gillette, and I kind of set up my presentation. Well, Moses and Alama asked me to kind of tell my story. I did a little bit in the devotional this morning, but my background is I grew up in Aotearoa, so I went to James Cook High School, and then I ended up being at BYU Provo. Here's my mugshot from work. Just a little bit of biographic information. That's my wife there, Beanie. I talked a little bit about this in the devotional. Well, who was in the devotional this morning? Okay. Alright, I'm going to skip through this. These are... I talked about our missionaries. These are our two sister missionaries. So, I was going to call them by their first name. Sister Gillette is in Hungary, and Sister Gillette is in Brazil.
Where in Brazil?
Sao Paulo. But I can't pronounce the name of the city that she's at.
What does it say? Oh, okay.
Ribeirão Preto, something like that.
Was your wife in Brazil last week?
What's that?
Was your wife in Brazil last week?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
small one.
Yeah, my sister-in-law passed away last week, so she came back for the time.
So my wife and your wife are cousins.
Oh, yeah.
There was an auntie that passed away.
See, we're making connections.
Small one.
Yeah.
So my experience, this is my, and again I talked about this in the devotional, but those are my degrees. I have a double major at BYU Hawaii, and then I did a master's, the doctoral degree. Moses Armstrong talked a little bit about James Cook High School. It's kind of a challenging, we're in a lower socioeconomic community there. I talked about connecting with people and being proximate. So for me, like the key for me, I think getting through education and into higher education was being connected to people and resources. So I was lucky enough to grow up in a home where my parents were pretty supportive of us going to school. I had a good extended family that were really supportive. Managed to get through high school, and then I didn't even know about BYU until I had an uncle that came back and said that he was graduating. And so at that time, my family wasn't active. I'd never heard about BYU, and so he said, come for graduation. I went over and I saw BYU Hawaii, and I thought, I could do this. So I ended up going to BYU Hawaii. I'm not going to go through the rest of things. I talked about that in my devotional. I talked a little bit about the concept of shame. I'm going to run with that. Here's some of the meat and potatoes. So I work at BYU Pro. I'm an assistant dean of graduate admissions. So I do everything on the front end to get students into graduate school. So it's broken down into two parts. There's the academic side for foreign national. So if you're not a US citizen or a permanent resident, then you're considered foreign national and you're subject to having a student visa to come to school at BYU Provo. And I should have started at the beginning. BYU Provo, right now we don't have any long distance learning online options. Everything is in residence on campus. So in order to pursue graduate options at BYU Provo, you have to relocate there, which means you have to get a student visa, you have to live there, work there, go to school there. This is real quick, the nuts and bolts of applying to graduate school at BYU Provo. Obviously, because we're a CES school, we're subject to, or applicants are subject to having a bishop's endorsement, ecclesiastical endorsement. That's a two-step process. It has to be both the bishop and stake president. A lot of applicants overlook that because they think, oh, I've got to focus on the academic stuff. But for us, if that endorsement is not in place, it's a hard stop. We can't move forward until that's in place. So as far as like time-sensitive things, for some people it is, others it's not, but that's probably one of the first things that needs to happen. And then obviously, because it's graduate school or post-grad, university requirement is you have to have a bachelor's degree, and anyone that's applying with a degree outside the US it's considered a foreign degree, even if it's from an English-speaking country like New Zealand. So even though I get some applicants that come from Canada and they're like, okay, I'm going to apply, here's my degree, and then anyone from a foreign educational system is subject to a foreign credential evaluation. So I get applicants saying, but it's in English. And I say, but it's not from the US, so you have to do that. The good thing about our process right now is that even if you have a foreign degree, like a bachelor's degree from New Zealand or Australia or wherever it might be, when you make application, you upload scanned copies of your degree certificates or diplomas, upload that into the application, and you're not subject to a foreign credential evaluation until you are recommended for admission. If you are recommended for admission by the program that you're applying to, I'm sorry for the hands. These are all our graduate programs. If you are recommended for admission by the graduate program that you're applying to, then at that point in time you become subject to a foreign credential evaluation. So you'd have to provide the official transcripts or academic record from the school that you attended, and you send it to we use an outside vendor called IERF, I forget, International Educational Research Foundation, and the cost for that's about $185. So we try to remove the financial barrier as part of the application process until after you know for sure that you're going to be, admitted to the program.
Are those tests facilitated through BYU, or do we have to go somewhere in New Zealand to do those tests?
Yeah, for these ones on here?
The English ones and the...
So because we're an English-speaking country, and there's only about 5 of them, and New Zealand is one of them, so US obviously, UK, Canada, Australia, Ireland I think is one, and then us, New Zealand. So we're one of the exceptions. Candidates from New Zealand that have New Zealand bachelor's degree aren't subject to the English proficiency requirement. But you could be subject to an entrance exam. So in that prospectus, in this prospectus, if you look at the back, of the prospectus, it has all the graduate programs that we offer again, plus a little bit more details, including if they require an entrance exam like the GRE. The GRE stands for Graduate Record Exam. It's kind of like the SAT, but at the graduate level. So it's testing core competencies. It could be writing, comprehension, reading, math. It's kind of pretty broad. Which is a pain because, here in New Zealand, if you get your bachelor's degree, you can apply for the graduate program and you don't have to do any kind of entrance exam. But in the US, you have another hurdle that you have to jump through. Not all programs require an entrance exam, and so when you're looking through these lists, you may pick a program where, lucky me, I'm not subject to an entrance exam. There's a handful of them that don't require entrance exams, but the majority of them do. So that's a little bit about the entrance exams. Most programs do require 3 letters of recommendation, and I usually refer applicants directly to the graduate program that they're applying to, because some will say, oh, we want all 3 letters from previous professors, or some will say we actually want letters from practitioners that they work with in their field, or the composition is different depending on the program that you're applying to. So one thing that you need to know about graduate school, and for those of you that have already done a master's, undergrad is a one-size-fits-all type thing, well, at least at BYU Provo it is. But at the graduate level, each individual graduate department has their own admissions criteria. So that, like in the prospectus, you'll see they've got different application deadlines. Some do require entrance exams. Some of them have independent departmental requirements. So if you're applying to art, the Masters of Fine Arts, there's a portfolio requirement that they require as well. So you have to do a little bit of homework as far as like what's required to be an applicant and what's required in the application. Our office, we regulate the minimum university requirements. So we're looking at the bachelor's degree, that it's an accredited bachelor's degree. We look at English proficiency, but obviously that's not something that you're subject to. We look at the GPA, grade point average. So in the US, they work on a 4.0 scale. So an A is 4, a B is 3, and so on. So you want at least a 3.0 or B average GPA. That's the minimum requirement for admissions to BYU. When I'm out recruiting, I have a lot of prospective applicants, especially domestic, saying, oh, there's no way that I can get into BYU because the average GPA is so high. Undergrad, the average GPA is sitting at about a 3.8, which is it's creeping up there. But at the graduate level, the minimum university requirement is a 3.0, which is actually quite generous. But each individual graduate program may have a GPA that's slightly higher. So you really, on our website, I'll show you the website, we have a programs page and it has admissions information, and there's a profile, a class profile, and it'll have the average GPA. So you kind of know what you're up against, so depending on which program are you interested in?
The executive MBA.
Okay. The executive is only for domestic students. You can't do it as international, unless you have an urgency in US studies. Each individual graduate program, they have different metrics that they're using, and so that the GPA will adjust depending on what the applicant pool looks like. It could drive the GPA up 1 year and then it may go down the next year. So,
what's the difference between first round, second round, third round, and final? What's it?
Yeah, so you get extra points if you apply early. Not all programs have that priority kind of deadline, but the MBA program does offer that. So you're wise to apply early, actually, to all programs, because if they have a cutoff deadline, if you come in late, they could just say our applicant pool is closed, we're not going to consider late applicants. And there's some programs that they have a deadline, but they don't have any applicants, and so they take late applicants even after their own deadline. So I went real quick through. I mentioned that there's 2 parts of the admissions process. One is the academic side, which is that, and that's kind of just really peripheral. It's kind of just, we went through that pretty fast. That's the first piece. As a foreign national, the second part is the visa side, so we're going to jump into that. But are there questions so far? Pretty simple. So on the visa side, like I said, all our programs are residence-based. You have to be, it's face-to-face in class. We don't have any online options, distance learning at the graduate level. And if you're not a US citizen or you don't have a green card, then you have to come in on a student visa. So this is what this is about. Real quick, how it kind of works is it's really based on finances. So the federal government, they have tasked each US institution to regulate their admissions process and say, okay, well, if a candidate is academically eligible for admission, then they become subject to the immigration regulations and they have to prove that they've got financial support to cover all their costs, all their expenses. So that's tuition. So the tuition and living expenses. So tuition, there's two expense schedules. One is if you're business and law, it's about $14,000 a year. That's an academic year, not a calendar year. And then if you're every other program, i.e. not business or law, is about $7,000 per year. So that's 2 semesters, fall and winter. Fall and winter semester constitute one academic year, which is really 8 months of being in school. And the academic year will run from August through December as fall, and then January through April as a winter semester. And then you generally get the summer period, which is May through the end of August, is your vacation period. So a lot of students, they have the option of either taking classes to kind of get through their program quicker in the summer vacation period, or they're out on internships and getting practical experience. But generally, our master's programs are about 2 years in length, and a PhD doctoral program is about 5 years. But depending on what you're in, it could go faster or slower, depending on how quickly you get through your core classes. And then if you're in a research-based program, how long it takes you to get through your research to either write your thesis or your dissertation. But professional programs like the MBA, it's non-research based, it's very lockstep, so it's going to be 2 years. It's mandated. Unless you try to take classes in the summer, but that's kind of the exception to the rule.
So if it is research based, is it possible to, how often do you have to report to your
Committee?
department committee?
So if it's research based, you have an assigned committee, which is usually made up of about 5 members, one being your chair, and then you have subcommittee members, which are, you have like 1 semester and a half to kind of nail down who's going to be in your committee. That first semester is when you're really trying to nail down what your research focus is. So you'd at least have your chair pretty much squared away within that first semester, and then your other committee members could come on, later on. But by the end of the, about 6 months into your program, that it's required that you have to have your program of study finalized, because otherwise you're just kind of floundering, and it's going to take you forever. So usually it's about 5 committee members, 1 chair and 4 other committee members, and they work with you as you go through your master's or PhD program to make sure that you're on task. The defense is a little different here. So over there, or in the US, your committee members are set, and they're the ones that are going to be in your defense. So they go through that whole journey with you. So really the defense is kind of a comprehensive review of everything that you've done. So there really shouldn't be any surprises at the end, whereas I think here in this jurisdiction, when you defend the composition of your committee members, it could be the same members or it could be different. Anyway, so that's kind of how, was that answer your question? Just out of curiosity, so MBA, what are you guys thinking as far as like graduate school options, or still kind of up in the air and just?
You're just looking at options.
Yeah.
For me and my son too.
Maybe teacher education or
Education?
mathematics.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good area to get into. STEM is a good area to get into. And I only say that because there's a lot more funding that's available in the STEM disciplines. So just a plug for that. It's a consideration. It's not the only consideration, but and then,
Yeah, doctorate.
and anything particular?
Writing, but more the social side of writing, with, and that's a problem knowing sort of what department I'd actually affiliate with. So teach writing, but it's based on family and personal history writing, and so yeah,
Yeah.
not sure where I'd fit.
So we don't have that many doctoral programs. There's about
I was just looking at that.
yeah, so it's that top list there. So I think it's like 26 total, and even that might be a bit
I
of
don't
a
think
stretch.
it's got more of them, do you?
There's more in the back, it seems like, but no, yeah,
Not really.
that's
Yeah, and in the prospectus it's flushed out because it breaks out. Well, these are all of them. I know there's 89, so they're all
Yeah.
listed here.
Yeah.
But in the back there's just a little bit more details as far as
Is
like
that
some of the
correct?
tracks.
Right.
So like for instance in the school of education there's an MED, but within the MED there's about 3 or 4 tracks. So it looks like there's more, but it's just one master's program with 4 specializations.
Yeah, so my son would be looking at civil engineering.
Yep.
And for me it would be for teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have like teachers ed, there's counselling, psychology and special education, there's educational leadership as far as like the teaching side of things.
Yeah.
But there is civil engineering too, both
Yeah,
the masters and
What is
PhD.
what is comparative arts and letters?
Yeah, so but those are just masters programs. We don't, but that
Oh, I see.
that would be more than what you've done, but just another masters. We don't. It doesn't carry on to a PhD.
So when, like the GMAT and the GRE tests and stuff like that, how do foreigners typically do those tests? Are those US based tests or?
But yeah, so I'm going to jump into the website now. So this is our website. It's gradstudies.byu.edu, and it's on the inside cover of this prospectus. It's down a little bit small. Our publications guy kind of messed up, but gradstudies.byu.edu will take you to our homepage, and then this is a good resource here. So that programs tab up there, it's basically a replication of this, like this list here, but every program is hyperlinked. So if we look at the MBA program, click on that, it's going to bring up the application deadline. Oh, that's the other thing I think I mentioned really quickly, but not all programs, well, we have multiple semesters right during the academic year, so fall, winter, spring, and summer. But not all programs admit every single semester or term. So most programs just admit in the fall semester, which is an August or September start date. So for the MBA program, it's just saying, oh, there's only one intake in fall, and the application deadline for that is May 1st. So you kind of have to work on the application deadline and say, I'm going to get my GRE and everything else done before that deadline. And I want to have earlier priority consideration. But if you scroll down on this page, it's going to have the admissions requirements, and it goes through, what's required to be an applicant for that program. So with regards to your question about, oh, well, okay, I'm subject to the GMAT, how do I take that? The
What does that
GMAT,
stand for? GRE?
so the GRE stands for Graduate Record Examination. It's not very intuitive, but it's basically, it's testing, like I said before, core competencies. Yeah. And then the GMAT stands for Graduate Management Admissions Test. So that's just for business. So you wouldn't take that to get into nursing or something like that. It's just for business. But these entrance exams are all facilitated through a company that's called ETS, Educational Testing Services. So if you
So anyway, coming around to this year again,
oh, actually, So for the GMAT, it's a subsidiary of ETS, but it's GMAT.
You can do it all online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ETS is the company that facilitates all the tests. So when you're ready to take the entrance exam, you have to go through their company, ETS, and then they'll have either test locations or test sites or some kind of online option that's available to you, but you have to work through them to do that. What was I going to say? Oh. The thing is, these entrance exams, they're not common knowledge here in this jurisdiction, right? Because obviously they're germane to education in the US. But in the US, there's a lot of commercial outlines, like private companies that prepare students to take these exams. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I have to take the GMAT or I want to take the GRE, well, how do I prepare for that? If you look online, there's a plethora of different companies that offer commercial courses to help you prepare to take that exam. My recommendation, if you are going to apply to graduate school and you're subject to an entrance exam, is to take a commercial preparation course.
Can you do that online?
Yeah. Not all companies are online, but there's a company that we generally refer applicants to, and they've changed their name now. I think it's just testperfect.com or test score perfect. Is somebody? Can you look that up? I'm pretty sure that's the new name. They used to be called Olympus Test Prep, but they just changed it like 2 weeks ago. So I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Test score. Actually, let me try that one. This will still work. I guess that website's still up. So Olympus Test Prep, that's what they used to be called. But this company, applicants that are subject to the entrance exam, that take this course, outscore all other applicants. So, which is interesting because at BYU Provo, we actually have a department that does BYU Test Prep, but they're not as good as these guys. So, for what it's worth, that would be my recommendation. If you're looking to take a commercial preparation course, these guys are really good. And then they do also, it's the owner of the company, is really cool. They offer an online option too, so you can do it remotely.
How much does that cost you?
It's about $500 US, but if you tell them that you're applying to BYU, they might give you a discount because they do a lot of work with us. So, anyway, that was your question. Thank you.
And you would recommend us to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump back to the. So I brought up this page here, like the outline of the academic requirements. These are all the different parts of the application that each individual graduate department or program is going to look at. And we always say that it has to be a holistic admissions approach, so they're looking at every single aspect of your application, right? So say you kind of bomb on the entrance exam, but the other parts are really strong, then that could be enough to get you over the finish line, right? Or say your GPA is low, well then you really want to bone up on the entrance exam so that you get a good score. So you want you want to be strategic in your application and say, well, what can I make stronger, or how can I make myself a more viable candidate for consideration? But definitely preparation is key. And then, like I say, in this prospectus, like looking at the dates, the application deadlines. So look at the application deadline and then work backwards from there. So, like most programs admit in the fall semester, like which I said is an August, September start date. Most applicants start a year in advance, so they're prepping right now between September through December, because the deadlines all run between December and March. So applicants are prepping right now, so they're taking the GRE test prep course, or they're getting their letters of recommendation squared away, so that they can hit all those priority deadlines.
Do they have any set allocations for foreign students, or no preferences there?
No, so the BYU brand, it gets kind of combined, I guess, or there's, BYU Hawaii, BYU Idaho, BYU Provo, and I've seen this just out here in the foyer. They're like, I want to do this online course, and then they look at my poster or they ask me, and I'm like, I'm Provo. And they're like, oh, I thought you were Idaho or Pathways. Even though our mission statements are very similar, the way that we accomplish that is very different between institutions. So BYU Hawaii is set up for international students predominantly. Like the composition is like a 50-50 split between domestic and international, and they actually want to increase that. So they're set up, their admissions process is set up to accommodate certain quotas, so they're, like I say, 50-50, they want to go to 75. Whereas at Provo, we don't have any of that kind of consideration. Like, we have international students, and we actually have per like, if you're doing ratio per capita between us and undergrad, we have a lot more international students at the graduate level, but there's not like quota or kind of an ideal target that we shoot for. Any other questions about what I've covered so far? So I think this is one of the last slides that I was going to show, but just real quick, with regards to the visa type process. So you get academically admitted, or you're qualified for admission, then you get recommended, then the international requirements, which is finances. And we kind of went through, the required amounts that you have to prove. Once you have met those two elements, and then we issue the documentation for you to get your student visa. So that document over there is what we call the I-20 document, and that's a federal document that my office actually issues to international students. And then you take that document to the US Embassy. You have to set an appointment using the Department of State. They have a form that you have to fill out and pay the fee. It's like $160. Once you get that squared away, then you go for your interview at the US Embassy, and then you get your visa and your passport, and that's what the visa looks like. That's an F1 visa. And then you come into the country using that visa and that document. If you don't have those two documents, then you could get turned away at the port of entry. You have to maintain status by, they get a designation here that's called DS, it's duration of status, which means you have to be actively pursuing or engaged in a degree. As soon as you drop out or don't have the minimum required credit hours, then the visa you become subject to removal. So visa maintenance as an international student is critical as another component of being a graduate student at BYU or in the US. So that's another layer of complexity, but it's just part and parcel of being.
So what about scholarships and?
Yep, we can talk about that. So most graduate students are funded directly through their graduate programs. It depends on the program that you go into. So, like I mentioned before, STEM, because it's research based and there's a lot of research grants that are associated with what the professor and the students are engaged in, there's quite a bit of money that's available. So I had a colleague that was here with me yesterday from biology. He's the chair of the biology department, and he had disclosed that typically they allocate like about $100,000 per year to their doctoral students, which more than covers the expenses, you know, that you're required to prove per year. But like English doesn't have any money. I mean, they may have like a half tuition scholarship, but not to the level of this type of funding. So when I say a lot of the funding is directly through the graduate programs, that's true to a certain extent, and then outside of that, it's you have to look at alternate sources of funding. So whether it's your personal finances, or if you have a sponsor. So I see quite a few mission presidents that say, oh, you know, I had this excellent missionary from New Zealand and I'm going to sponsor him. So then they send in documentation, so either bank statements or a tax return, proof of income saying we're going to fund them for $21,000 a year. Or scholarships, there's loans that some foreign nationals, they secure before they go for the interview. So they get recommended for admission, they take that admission letter that we issue, take it to their funding source, whatever it might be, or bank maybe, and say, you know, I've just been admitted to BYU, can I get a loan? That's another way that some students do it as well. So there's multiple ways to prove finances, but when you're looking at that type of amount and it's US dollars, it can be quite a large amount of money. So, and then if you're coming over as a married student, for each dependent that you have, either a spouse or children, it's an additional $2,100 per year per dependent. So,
Time's law.
yeah,
Good luck with that.
it's doable. So, you know, my experience, and I mentioned this in the devotional. My wife and I were both in school, both international students, and we did it, you know, while we were raising the children, so our family, so we had 6 kids, so it wasn't the life of luxury, but I mean, it was pretty rough, but we did it. So there's the required finances for the visa is one thing, but once you get into the country, they're obviously, you've got to figure out how to pay rent and buy food, but the only real fixed cost that you have to meet from semester to semester is how you're going to pay for tuition. So it's doable. It's just that you kind of have to do the hard yards for a little bit. Unless finances aren't even a problem for you, maybe you got a rich relative or something. Anyway, I think that's the last slide that I was going to share. Any other questions or anything? Kind of went through a lot of stuff there, but
No, thank you.
you're welcome. Thanks for
Can
coming.
I still take that?
Yeah, you can take that. So, my card is on the table. I should have grabbed some more cards, but if you have any other questions that come to mind, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to respond.
Your visa application, just asking. Is it
You're welcome.
personal?
Okay.
Good luck, work. You can do it.
Is it just personally about you, not any of your family members?
For what, sorry?
For visa application? It's just to
Yeah.
do with you, not any of your family members?
Yeah, you have to apply for all of them. So, yeah, if they're going to accompany you,
Yeah,
they all
they
have their,
are.
they all have their visas. So.
Yeah.
So
They fall under the same study visa then?
Yeah, do they?
no, so you get an F1 as the student, and then they get a dependent visa, which is an F2. So on an F2, you can accompany, but you can't work in. They've changed the regulations a couple of times. first you could be degree seeking, then you couldn't be in school, and now you can be in school, but you just can't be full time. So if the dependents come in and they're on an F2 visa, they could potentially, so say your spouse, right? Your spouse says, oh, I'm going to accompany you, I'm not interested in going to school. They get there and they're like, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to actually do something because it seems appealing to me. They could go to school, they just can't be full-time, they'd have to do it part-time.
Really? Why is that?
So they have this thing called intent at the time that you enter the country.
So did that happen for you and your wife?
No, because at the time that we went over, we were both students. So,
But you were married.
Mhm.
Okay.
but at the time that you apply for the visa, they capture that moment in time and they say, well, what's your intent at this point in time? And then if you change while you're in the country, then they basically try to say, oh, you misrepresented your intent, your original intent, if you've changed the reason why you're in the country. So F2 is kind of a quirky kind of a status right now. And it keeps changing, and with Trump in office, it's every day is, what's the new thing? Yeah, so it's doable. If you've got children, they come in on an F2, they can attend public school as well. When they start getting older, so like say you have an 18-year-old or like say a 17-year-old, they come in on an F2, but as soon as they turn 18, they're considered an independent.
Yeah.
And so they have to be on their own I-20. So there's some added complications there. It just depends on what your situation is. So at the time that so if you were to go over, what's the composition of your dependents right now?
Yeah, so my son's 24, so he's a...
Oh. Yeah, so he probably wouldn't be able to accompany you as a dependent because he's above 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has to do it basically by himself. Okay, it's good to know. Just another thing, if your husband's been denied visa, does it affect anything?
It can, because the thing is, the State Department tracks all that information.
Yeah.
So when you go for the interview, it's going to come up on your screen and they're going to say,
Why?
you got denied back in 2010. And the reason, it's going to come up on the screen too, like the notes that the consular officer entered,
Yeah.
it's all tracked there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll come up.
Have you seen Kiwis go over and do the MPA program?
Yep. So the executive's not available for internationals just because the federal government doesn't like.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you have to be full-time.
Filter your own leaders.
Well, because their concern is if you're only going to school part-time, then what are you doing for the other
Yeah.
time? And
Well, that was my question, was can you do the executive MBA and also work at the same time? But you obviously can't. Yeah.
so employment authorization is something that's wrapped into the F1 visa, but I didn't mention this before. As an F1 student, you're restricted to on-campus employment.
Yep.
So I mentioned, TA or RA positions, like working with a professor. That's considered on-campus employment. But if you were saying, I'm going to go work at Deloitte and Touche because in Salt Lake, because my friend works there and you can get me a job, that's off-campus.
Has it started?
Oh no, we're just wrapping up. Sorry. I'm in here again, so you could come in. Oh. So if you work off campus, you have to have employment authorization. That has to be approved through immigration services. So, some students will say, I'm going to work under the table. Well, technically that's illegal. That would be a breach of your F1 status and you'd be subject to removal. So that's a big no-no. Having said that, it happens quite a bit, but
That's their prerogative and they deal with the consequences.
yeah, and then BYU is saying, well, we do have the honour code.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's technically a breach of that. But the other thing is, I talked about like the summer break, when we talked about internships. If you're going away for this internship and you're getting paid, then you have to have employment authorization for that as well. and there's a process for that, and that's facilitated through our International Student Services Office. At the end of your studies, you're also eligible for a 12-month period of employment authorization called optional practical training. So a lot of students, if one will get OPT, they call OPT, and they do 12 months working with the idea that, hopefully my employer will pick me up and then I'll get a work visa, which is usually F1 to H1B. That's also an option. A lot of business students actually do that because the Marriott School does a good job of placing students, and it's kind of self-serving. They want to place students in high caliber positions because it helps with the ranking. So there's, as well as like ranking of the school, cheap tuition, job placement is a huge thing. So an MBA at BYU is an attractive proposition for a prospective applicant.
Yeah. So I've done my bachelor's degree and I've done a postgraduate diploma or half of an MBA here. Does that stuff get considered in my application, does it?
It will. They'll definitely consider it. It wouldn't count as like transfer credit to knock down your time in the program. But if you're going up against somebody that had a background in music and then you've got all the experience, you would be the stronger candidate. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Well, thanks for coming and asking questions. Again, my card's on my table. I should have brought it in, but if you grab my card and if you have any other questions that come to mind, feel free to shoot me an email.
Cool.